So the iChange project is an EU project, and there are 8 living labs within this project. And every city, so every living lab, is looking at their climate change or sustainability problem. And here at the Amsterdam Living Lab, we look at heat in cities.
We do research into the urban climate to see whether people experience problems with heat stress. So here we are at the Javakade in Amsterdam, and we are in front of one of the weather stations that we have as Wageningen University. We have a network of 25 weather stations across the city of Amsterdam, measuring the urban climate. And the different instruments measure temperature, humidity, wind speed, heat stress and precipitation. We want to have kind of different neighborhoods covered. So the neighborhoods with buildings built in just after the war up to the recent times, and also some weather stations in more green areas and other next to the water, so we can kind of check what kind of urban design, palette of green water, how ventilation works in this kind of open areas, so that we have some good examples of what kind of locations have a good urban planning and architecture to promote reduced urban heat.
So in Amsterdam, we not just focus on outdoor heat, but actually also indoor heat. So we really want to understand how hot it can get inside houses in Amsterdam. And therefore we placed weather stations inside houses. We have 100 participants. We went there in person and placed the weather station at their house. We also took surveys with them, how they experience heat. And with these weather stations, the participants can see their own measurements on their app, and therefore they have a good idea of how they can play around in their own house, can see if when opening and closing windows, for example, can help with adapting to the heat.
So we see AMS as a true partnership and also an ecosystem of innovation. And what it means is that we build networks, so people meet each other, interact with each other. For example, researchers come to the AMS Institute to work on research. But we also have a master program, and we have entrepreneurship. So we have a startup booster also to facilitate new companies, new innovations in the environment of Amsterdam. So I think citizen science is really important. It adds something to other data that we already have or that we want to collect. Of course, there are different types of data. You could say there's more the subjective and the objective data, and there are also different purposes to use this data, which can be for rules or regulations, but it can also be to find out what's happening in the city. And I think citizen science or citizen and collecting data through citizens, it's really important for this subjective data, which is equally important as objective data. And it's also important to understand what's happening in different parts of the city, in small micro detail, if you like, to better understand heterogeneity in the city, for example. So differences that are taking place in different parts of the city.
Well, like many cities in the world, Amsterdam faces climate challenges with respect to extreme weather events like heavy rainfall, heat waves. But also drought in the city is an issue. And these climate problems each have their own specific aspects. So heat waves, for instance, they affect the well-being of people and also the productivity of people at work.
So cities are warmer than rural areas. That's due to the urban heat islands. And that means that not just during the day, but especially at night, the cities are warmer because the urban fabric takes up the heat and releases it during the evening. But that's also the moment that people try to sleep. They are indoors, they try to sleep. But if a heat wave is consistent and they can't sleep because of the heat, it's just day after day they can't sleep, and that increases their risk of health damages and can even lead to mortality. So it's very important that we understand how hot it also can get inside houses.
One of the tools that we use is this meteorological bike, and we cycle routes through the neighborhood, to the city, and we compare kind of the heat in different neighborhoods that have different build-up or different morphology, different amount of greens and water or not. And it measures different ingredients that let people feel, make it feel warm or not. So one of the sensors is illustrated here. So that is the shortwave or solar radiation sensor that directly measures the sun that comes from the radiation that comes from the sun or reflected from the street. A thermal sensor that measures the radiation, thermal radiation that comes from warm walls or from a road. And we have those looking in all directions, so on both sides, upward, downward, frontward, and backward. And all together, these radiation components, they tell how warm a person, how much radiation he or she receives. And then we have, in addition to that sensor here, temperature and humidity. And well, you can feel it, the air is being sucked and pumped through the sensor. So every time we have new fresh air being measured. And finally, we have here the meteo tracker. This is one of the sensors that's being used in the iChange project that citizens use to do their own measurements. And we kind of use this meteo bike as a reference device for this meteo tracker to justify that this citizen science tool is useful for the study that we want to do.
Before this project, there were not many studies on indoor heat, on indoor observations. It's quite difficult to set up such a measuring network, but we find it very valuable. So this project now, it really empowers the citizens to take actions in their own home, to also take action in their own neighborhoods. Now we will visit one of the participants and he will tell his story about his side of heat in his house.
My name is Yannick. I'm actually a weather forecaster, a meteorologist, and I live in Amsterdam. I live in a nice neighborhood, very mixed neighborhood with middle-rise buildings actually, and also a lot of greenery here in the area. Actually, I was asked by Gert-Jan, also one of the project leaders, and I immediately said yes, without any doubt. I was really enthusiastic about it. I want to participate. And it's nice to have the insight of the data for myself also, but also have helped to participate in the project for the scientists. So this is one of the sensors, and I actually place this one on my desk, which is actually at height of a person and also workspace height. It's always in the shade. And it's got quite a constant temperature, so there's not really much airflow around it. It's a quite stable state which is measures here in the house. What I do is I watch the outside temperature, so how warm is it outside, and when it's inside it's cooler than outside or warmer than outside, I'll close the doors and the windows if it's warm outside, because if you leave the windows open and it's warmer outside, you get the warm air in your house. So my opening and closing scheme of the doors and the windows has changed by that. So this is a sensor, and that has an opening where it measures all the parameters, and I can show also the app. So it measures quite a lot of things, temperature, also air pressure, which is not really important for this project, but dew point is. It says something about feels like temperature. The humidity, of course, same, and we have CO2, noise levels, and also humidity for the bedroom. So I'll show the other sensor, but it's located over here. It's a bit bigger actually than the one in the living room, and this one is powered.
You know, from green to red.
I've learned quite a lot of things. So it gave me a lot of insight about my indoor temperature and the differences in temperature in the house. For instance, here in the living room and in the bedroom. but also things like noise and CO2 concentration, which says something about how well you ventilate the room. So it was really insightful actually to do that, yeah. Things I did, for instance, at work as a weather forecaster, I mentioned more and more in those weather forecasts when people had to close their windows or close their curtains. And for instance, at 7 o'clock at night, you can open the windows again, stuff like that, to take with us yeah, the whole community and also the average person.
Yannick, I also brought a citizen science kit for you.
Thanks.
It measures the temperature, but also the air quality. So now we can also measure the air quality inside your house.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always wanted to do that, so thank you very much for that.
Great.
I'll put it here on my
think
desk,
that's a good collection.
near the spots of the other modules, so that's great. Ah, cool. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. And then we will see each other.
Yes, we'll see each other.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Citizen science, I think, is very useful. In our project, it works very well. So we really see that the people in our project, with the measurements that they have, with the workshops that we organize, they are much more knowledgeable about this topic. They're much more knowledgeable about the heat in their own home. And they figure out things that we, in return, during the workshops, they can explain it to us. So that really gives us a better understanding of not just having some numbers, but also have a personal story behind those numbers.
So it's good to work together with scientists and citizens because then they get to know each other, they get to know what actually happens in the scientific project, and they get the opportunity to decide on what the research is going to be about and how to evaluate the data and how to make interpretations based on the data.
I think at the end, everything is behavior. No? We want transitions and transformations for a better society. And we are all part of society, whether we are citizens, whether we are researchers, when we are in the government or when we are big companies. And I think we need to realize that we all have a responsibility.
So it's an important part of changing your behavior is awareness. Why are you doing it even? So in a project like iChange, for instance, people get to know what happens in their homes during a heat wave. Where does it get hot? Where doesn't it get hot? Does it help if I use shades or not? Does it help if I ventilate? So I think this type of awareness is really crucial to get meaningful behavioral change that people are really living, you know, not because somebody else says it, but because they understand.